Welcome to episode 24. This is one of our night sky sessions, and Shane and I are back to talk about some of the goings on in the nighttime sky, even though that, we really haven't been able to see much here during the monsoon Saskatchewan season, unless you're able to see something. I haven't really seen much of a break in the clouds there, Shane.
Not much. Just some naked eye stuff in the backyard when I take the dog out for her final bathroom break before bed. Watching Cygnus and Lyra kind of gain a nice height in the sky in the east. But really, that's it. No telescopes, no binoculars. How
Yeah,
about you?
we finally get through all that wind, and it's
Yeah.
just now we're being punished with rain showers. Now, like you said, there was one evening where it cleared off, but that evening everything was soaking, wringing
Yeah.
wet. Like
Yeah.
it was just soaking. So it's unfortunate. So I have a few things coming up. I mean, maybe we can hopefully get out here, but we're recording this a little bit early. Today is actually the solstice.
Yeah, how about that? We moved this to accommodate some Father's Day get-togethers because normally we record this on the Sunday.
Yeah,
And hey, lined up for the solstice.
Completely unintentional. And you know what's great about the solstice?
I don't.
It's unobservable anyway, and we're here under very, very thick clouds. So, but traditionally, or I guess historically, and when I moved here just over a decade ago, I did read about the historical weather phenomena here in southern Saskatchewan, and June is the wet month. I think something like 40 or 60% of the precipitation that we receive in this province lands during the middle 3 weeks of June.
Well, that is lining up with what we're experiencing right now.
and I mean, just my years here have kind of bore that out. You might get some wet periods from time to time. But like pretty consistently this June month, which is great because we're in that perpetual twilight we've talked about before, and really not much observing to be had for us anyway, unfortunately. So,
yeah, one of the things also I like about the solstice as a visual astronomer is that it marks the turning of the duration of the days. They're no longer growing; they'll start shrinking. And the best part of that is, our nights are going to start getting longer, which is great for observing.
Yeah. So that is exciting, and I just heard this morning that the Grasslands National Park is going to be open for camping.
Yeah, June 29th, I think, right?
Yeah, with some pretty heavy restrictions and signage and blah 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 and all that kind of jazz. So yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna give them a ring this weekend and see what we kind of range, and we'll see where we can go from there. But I'm definitely excited to get down there. I know you probably would be as well.
Oh, very much so. Definitely for new moon in July and August, provided that the weather cooperates, as long as it's not raining or blowing 90 kilometers an hour. I am game. I want to be there to do some observing.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go down at least a couple nights and stay inside somewhere, rent a place, and kind of try. I made some plans before they had anything official, because that wasn't until today, and I started getting concerned that I just wouldn't get any dark sky observing in, since they were not permitting any camping in the park. So I thought, well, I'll book in somewhere. So I've done that now, and plan to stick to that plan, and hopefully our plans can align sooner than later. But it's like, it is challenging to go down there at the best of times and to kind of arrange for everybody to kind of land there on the same date. And we've been very, very successful at it. But this is like one of those extra monkey wrenches, which is proving a little bit challenging, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it'll, fingers crossed that it works out. The interesting thing too about grasslands, and we've seen this happen so many times, is the forecast may not look favorable. It might look, partly cloudy or other things that would get in the way of observing. But there's something magical about this, like that grasslands location, that it often clears up, and you often end up with really good nights of observing. It's quite rare for us to get skunked out and not have any good observing over the course of a couple evenings.
Yeah, the only thing that's ever really skunked us there has been forest fire smoke.
Yeah, yeah, forest
Um,
fires. Yeah.
yeah, which although in a way it's kind of weather, and sort of one of those unfortunate things that perhaps those could be prevented a little bit more than what we're all doing now. But we'll see. Hopefully, with the rains that we're having now, things are getting soaked in the west, when we can't really observe anyway. And then hopefully in the coming weeks, when we are now able to get out to the dark skies, we're able to do that, and won't have any forest fires to deal with, and hopefully some clear skies will line up.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Monday we've got some stuff we can observe this coming week, even even in our limited time that we have, with the nights being so short as far as darkness goes. On Monday the 22nd, we have the slim 2-day-old crescent moon, and it's going to be way down in the glow of sunset. So probably going to need binoculars. So get your image stabilized binoculars out. Have you used those much for like trying to catch thin crescents?
Yeah, yeah, for sure I have. They're fantastic for that. Really, like a any binocular is great on the moon, but the ones that I have are 12 times, and that is fantastic on the moon.
Yeah, that should really pull it in this time. But for people who are further south, you probably won't have too much difficulty. But you and I, being here at about 50 degrees north latitude, we're battling quite a bit of evening sky glow from the sunset all night right now. So
Hmm.
let's see, Wednesday. If you look now, the moon's going to be pretty easy on Wednesday evening, even for us, I think, as it waxes towards full, and it's going to be paired very close with Regulus in Leo. So it's sort of like a last chance to see that part of Leo before it descends into the sunset and then disappears behind the sun. But one of the things I do with my astronomy class is I always try to give them the dates when the moon and a star are going to be lined up together, because people that are learning the night sky for the first time, they can use that moon as a guide, and it's just really good practice. The moon is really easy to find, and everybody typically can locate it and see it unless it's really low down. And then when it is beside a bright star, that IDs the bright star, and then kind of as the nights go forward, you can sort of slowly learn a few more stars and constellations, and then over the run of a year or several years, you can really branch out from those stars and constellations to the ones next door. The moon doesn't necessarily pass through. So I think a lot of people have been pretty successful at learning the night sky that way.
Yeah, that's a great tip. The first object that I located all by myself with my 8-inch Skywatcher Dobsonian, my first real telescope.
And those are nice telescopes. I just want to say,
Oh, yeah.
I started in this just a few years, maybe even only a couple years before you, basically at the same time. But just after I started, Skywatcher kind of came out with these, or otherwise I just didn't know about them. But I never heard tell of them until 2 or 3 years after I started in the hobby. And when those came out, they were so much better than what we were all buying just a few years before. It was really, really dramatic, the difference. They were smaller, lighter. The optics were really good, and they remain really good in those Skywatcher telescopes.
Yeah, an 8-inch Skywatcher like that, it can easily provide, excuse me, provide you a lifetime of observing. It's the
Absolutely.
perfect aperture. It's light enough that you can move it around fairly easily. It doesn't take a lot of space up in your vehicle, if you want to take it out to a dark sky. But it's enough aperture that you can really pull in some faint objects, and really start to see some structure and shape to them.
And
Yeah,
not that
great telescope.
expensive. Yeah, not that expensive either. I don't know what they run these days, but they're in like just this few $100s. And I know that's a lot of money to people. I mean, it's a lot of money to me. It's not inexpensive, but as far as telescopes go, this is where what I consider to be affordable, high quality telescopes come into play. And I think for well under $1,000, you can get one of these and get all the eyepieces and books that you're ever really going to need. And I mean, honestly, once you buy that stuff, like that's it. There's no sort of entry fee apart from if you're going to go and drive somewhere to do astronomy, or if you're going to join a club. But typically, even even those kind of things are reasonably affordable. You're not necessarily having to buy new things every week. And plus, like, as listeners will, I can attest to, like, we will share stuff around. Like, you've borrowed some stuff from me. I have an eyepiece of yours right now, and that kind of continues on. I've had students that have gone and bought these sky watchers and go observing together and share their own equipment. And it really is a great set.
Yeah, it is. And I think you can get that Skywatcher for around 500 Canadian. And I
Okay.
think they usually come with a couple of Plossl eyepieces, a finder, basically everything you need to get started, and to keep enjoying it for a long time.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I mean, if people are like, we're not sponsored or anything. I mean,
no.
be great if we did. I mean, if people are in Canada, or they're looking for good reputable dealers, we have one out here in Western Canada, which is All Star Telescope. They are excellent to deal with. I can't recommend them well enough. They come out to the Star Party every year. Ken, the guy who runs it, and his spouse, they come there with some big tents, and they're supporting the local amateur astronomy community. And I know he does a lot of other sessions and that, and helps to teach people the night sky, and really nice and honorable company. And then out east, of course, is the Great Astronomy Plus now,
Hmm.
as Stefan's calling his company, with the slight change in name from Lila Nature. And being from Eastern Canada, that's of course where I ended up ordering most of my stuff from, getting started, and just because of the selection, not knocking anybody else, but I believe Stefan probably has the best selection in Canada. But those are both very, very upstanding and reputable dealers. Still waiting on my mount from Stefan, though.
And maybe I'll throw out one piece too about those 8-inch Dobsonians. I had a Skywatcher, but Orion makes one that's really good. I think Meade makes one that's really good. And I think there's probably a few others out there too. So, um, as long as you're buying from one of those reputable dealers, you're going to end up with a good telescope.
Yeah, and there's lots in the States, like
Yeah.
OPT, bought lots from High Point
Yeah.
Scientific. There's lots of great ones. But just being in Canada, of course, we have to deal with that over the border kind of stuff. And I know, like, in recently chatting with Stefan, he was saying how that is definitely a challenge, but he takes care of that challenge, and has some sort of broker or something that helps at the border. So kind of can save you a few dollars when you're in Canada to actually buy from Canadian distributors. Sometimes it doesn't, or if you're looking for a particular piece of gear, I know sometimes OPT is pretty good about finding some sort of custom piece of gear I'm looking for, and always really good to deal with. And then of course I've got to kind of sort some of that brokerage stuff out on my end, but usually they're pretty handy at actually helping out with that too. So it's not really that big a deal, but yeah. So what did you look at with that? What was the first thing you looked at with that 8-inch?
It was the moon. I was woefully underprepared. I've always had an interest in astronomy, so I'd finally got my first real job. Starting my career, so making a little extra money.
Line cook
I
at the local Harvey's?
yeah, exactly. Um, Actually, was a technical support representative at the local telecommunications company,
All right, good stuff.
and saved up some money, ordered the Skywatcher, received it, set it up, and then looked at it probably for about a month in my living room, wondering what the heck do I do with this thing. So finally, I was out on my patio. My uh, not wife at the time, but eventually became my wife. We lived in an apartment at that time, and so I was out on the patio one evening and saw a nearly full moon out. And that inspired me to finally pull out the Skywatcher and try to locate the moon, which, for the first time is actually a little easier said than done. Now, once you gain a little more experience using a telescope, it's quite simple to point and find the objects you want to look at. But yeah, it was the moon. And I think it was one of our recent podcasts. I talked about the first time I saw Saturn, which was my first view through the telescope ever, and how that image is just burned into my memory. Well, that first time with my Skywatcher looking at the moon, so that's the first time I've seen the moon through a telescope. That image is still burned into my memory as well. I
Mhm.
couldn't believe the detail, the amount of craters and ridges and contours. Like, it just blew my mind away with I was able to see through that telescope. And then that really lit the fire to continue in this hobby and grow.
Yeah, the one thing with the moon is that, well, my first telescope was also an 8-inch f6 Dob, but honestly, not. I'm not going to get into brands or anything. It wasn't as good as the Skywatchers that we have now, and I was surprised, so even with that telescope, how good it was. So my previous view of the moon had been through a 16-inch Cassegrain on top of the university. It's actually 3 stories above where I would sleep at night. So it was pretty convenient just to pop up there when my fellow students were doing their labs and do some viewing through it. So I was kind of familiar with what the moon looked like through a telescope. And then when I got my own, I was like, whoa, that huge, many thousands of dollar sophisticated instrument in this giant dome on a building, really gave about a similar view to my 8-inch. Like, it really wasn't that different. Of course, the resolution was better, but the seeing wasn't as good in that spot as you can get to with an 8-inch. And it was surprising how close the views really were.
That's interesting.
Yeah. First thing I ever looked at, though, was Mars.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that's what I've been observing. Technically, that's what I've been observing the longest.
Right on.
So there's the summer triangle, and I kind of just sort of stuck in some notes around the summer triangle. So what is the summer triangle, Shane?
Well, it's 3 of the brighter stars in the summer sky that just happen to form a kind of a triangle.
Big.
Now, it's huge. Yeah, it's a big part of the sky. It's Deneb in Cygnus, Altair in Aquila, and Vega in Lyra.
Yeah.
Now, what's significant about the summer triangle? Because you teach this a lot at your classes. I've been there when you talk about it.
Yeah, so it helps, you learn the night sky. Like, it helps you really navigate the nighttime sky. And then, as well, like, it contains 3 of these very bright, easy to see constellations from the city. And the Milky Way cuts right through it. So when you do get out to a dark side, or even from the city, if you kind of scan your binoculars through it, you're gonna maybe be able to see some of the Milky Way even through the light pollution.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my backyard right now, Deneb and Vega are nicely visible. Quite easy to spot even in the city because of how bright those stars are. They're quite prominent.
Now, if you look just beside the summer triangle, actually kind of maybe not quite beside it yet, but in the middle, there's a few of these smaller constellations. Now, the summer triangle itself, it's not a constellation, it's an asterism, which is just basically a grouping of stars. Technically speaking, a constellation is like a region of stars as defined in a 1932 charter by the International Astronomical Union. But the patterns we see in the sky, these are typically just patterns of a constellation, sort of a grouping of stars within a constellation boundary. But with the summer triangle, of course, it's crossing many different constellation boundaries, primarily Cygnus and Lyra and Aquila. But then within that, there's actually a few of these smaller constellations. There's Vulpecula, there's Sagitta, there's Delphinus, there's Aquiles, and then kind of if you add on Lyra and the water jar rising to the southeast, these are really small constellations. And I just love these little constellations. So a few years ago, remember those, I guess they're called like a constellation binocular that you had made up with the 3D printer?
Yes, yep.
And so they give like around a 20 or 25 degree field of view, very wide field of view. Well, with these binoculars, you can easily fit in several of these little constellations all at once. So I always really enjoy kind of panning through these little constellations. But even with my 7x35s, like I can get most of each of these constellations. And like the Sagitta, I think I can get the whole constellation in my 7x35s, and most of the other ones will come pretty close to fitting. You can kind of just sort of pan around a little, and that's a lot of fun, even from the city at this time of year. Like as the rising, if we do get a night that's not too wet, I'll go out and kind of pan through those. Have you spent much time in these sort of little wonders?
Not so much from like just observing the constellations, but like Sagitta, I always go there every year, and two of my favorite objects are near Sagitta, in between that and Cygnus. The famous M27 dumbbell nebula. Um, for anybody that has not observed this through a telescope, the reason why I really like it is, um, a lot of the objects that we'll look at, sometimes it's hard to distinguish the actual shape as it looks in photographs. But this is one of those objects where you can really start to pull off like the kind of the two ends to it that look a little bit larger than say in the middle, and you start to envision the actual, a dumbbell. And it's a great nebula. It's quite large. It's quite bright. Telescopes of almost any aperture reveal something there. So I love looking at that. And then very close is the coat hanger open cluster, NGC 6802. And that's another great binocular object or wide field in a telescope.
Is
It's great.
is the coat hanger an actual cluster? I thought it was just an alignment of stars. There was a
Oh, okay.
cluster on one end, but
Oh, yeah. You know what?
I mean, don't think I'm grilling
Yeah.
you here live on the on the radio kind of thing, because one of the things that I'm really interested in is many of these clusters that were once thought not to be clusters. Like there's some of the Ruprecht clusters, like the one down there in Sagittarius that I wrote a paper on, and they had thought that that wasn't a cluster, and then when some of the Penn State astrophysicists pointed the big binocular telescope on Mount Graham at it, they discovered that it was a cluster. So I wasn't sure. I mean, maybe that will be discovered to be a cluster.
Well, let me read something here to you because I made a mistake. So NGC 6802 is the small cluster that's almost, like, it's right beside the coat hanger.
Yeah, it's sort of off one of the sides of it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So the coat hanger is actually Colander 399.
Yeah.
And it's so the right up here in Sky Safari says, I don't know if I'm getting this guy's name right, but Brockeye.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brockey's cluster is a large cluster of about 36 stars spread over 1 degree. It is commonly known as the coat hanger because of the pattern formed by its 10 brightest stars, which is a coat hanger kind of upside down. One of the brighter stars has an orange color that contrasts with the bluish tone of the other stars. So I don't know. Maybe I'll do a little more reading on this one to find out what other atlases or guides say about
Yeah.
Colander 399.
I've done a fair bit of research on this one, and I actually have quite a few sketches on it that I've done naked eye and through binoculars and small telescopes. So with my eye, I can see a couple of the brighter stars, but I still do get that coat hanger outline even with unaided eye.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
but of course, this is from the darkest sight we have accessible to us. And then, excuse me, this cluster is pretty interesting, or grouping, and maybe I should say nebulae, because it was first noticed by a guy named Al Sufi in or around the 900 AD mark, or just after, and he was a Persian astronomer. And of course, he's operating about 700 years, or just a little under, before the telescopes pointed at the nighttime sky. And so that's a pretty interesting feat that he actually discovered this long before that.
The coat hanger?
Yeah,
Wow.
he's actually credited with that. Now, there was a time where and this is sort of my interpretation of the history of astronomy, where it kind of fell out of favor to have this there, very likely because they were unfortunately burning people like Bruno at the stake for talking about things changing up there and maybe new things being found. So it seems like it kind of, in a way, went away, but it was sort of still in the annals of astronomical history. And then when Bronte came along, because I think he was observing either in the late 1880s or early 1900s, and he kind of made up a list of a variety of clusters, and of course this was one. But he is definitely not the original discoverer. And Sufi actually drew quite beautiful charts, in Arabic style, and quite gorgeous. So if you look up Al Sufi and star charts, he created what's called the Book of Fixed Stars, or well, that's what he called it. But really, what this was, and I may be just sort of misinterpreting it, but it really was an updated version of Ptolemy's Almagest, which was based on the Hipparchus, I think, 2nd century BC catalog. And so that's kind of how like the sort of the early workings of these star charts sort of move forward through time. But Al-Sufi was adding things, and the biggest thing that he did, and this is really, really important, is if you've ever looked at really old star charts, do you ever notice sometimes they're flipped left to right? Make it very confusing to use on them. Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
So the reason why they did that was it's sort of an issue of perspective. So you know how if you have like even like Google Maps, right? If you zoom out, you're going to see that south is down, north is up typically, and like to the right you're going to have east, and to the left you're going to have west.
Okay.
There's nothing that says that this is how you have to do it. This is just sort of in many ways like our Western way of looking at a map. And one of the other sort of Western ways of looking at a map was to think about the sky as this kind of zoomed out version of that. And that's why it's reversed. Now, when you're actually looking down at a map, it's just kind of worked out, sort of fortunately, that things work pretty well that way. And we all kind of learn that in school or whatever. But when we actually go and try to use that on the night sky, because typically you're not grabbing a map and then trying to navigate in such a way as much, but with the nighttime sky, you're often holding it there and then trying to look at the stars. And of course, if they were reversed, that makes a big barrier. Now, getting back to Al-Sufi, he actually flipped them and correctly oriented them.
Really?
Yeah, so that was one of his contributions. It took quite a long time for that to really catch on, not until about the 1600s, and a lot of other charts were done in reverse even after that. But definitely he kind of helped to kick that off. And of course, the Persians were just phenomenal astronomers, despite not having optical instruments at the time. Of course, nobody did. But anyway, sort of an interesting little side trail into the history of star charts in astronomy.
I enjoy your historical interludes occasionally when we're just talking here.
Yeah, well, it's like that's one of my real interest areas, and that's one of the things that I teach in my classes. I'm actually going to teach a class over Zoom in August. It turns out I don't know how people register yet, but it's through the University of Regina. Of course, I'm a volunteer educator, and I think I know they charge for it. I believe everything they charge us goes towards helping run the outreach facility. But it's really great because I don't have to do any of the overhead. I just show up, and usually I show up in person. Sometimes you show up with me and help do a class, and this time that's going to be done all over Zoom for 4 weeks. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Cool. So we also have Jupiter and Saturn in the sky. They're fairly low. They're around 30 degrees up, about 3 fifths lengths. And they're sort of halfway up between the horizon, at least for us anyway, and Altair, about 3 fifths lengths below Altair as well. And then in the morning sky, we have Venus coming back. So I'm pretty excited about that. I was really enjoying some Venus observing here in the spring, and pretty excited to get my slightly larger telescope, hopefully running on a mount here in the next few weeks. But really by the very end of June, we're going to have it rising high enough in the morning sky. And then, of course, once we get in July, it's going to be high enough to actually do some observing. So I'm really kind of fingers crossed that in the next 3 weeks, my tracking mount is going to get here, and I'm going to be able to get on that. So pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And, Venus is something I would like a little more time with. We had a lot of fun observing it. But I really didn't get into trying different filters until maybe my last 1 or 2 observations of Venus. And I'd like to spend some more time trying different colors of filters to see if it changes the view and what I'm able to see with the different glass there.
Yeah. What color filters do you have? What are you thinking of trying?
Well, all of them. I was doing some research, and like people were even using nebula filters on Venus, which was kind of surprising to me. But it sounds like that light blue filter is a good one. I think even dark blue greens. I have that Bader contrast booster. I'd
Yeah,
like to give
I bought
them
one
a
as
full
well.
run. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
gonna try that. I have some of the Lumicon light blue filters. I got to say, even though the Lumicon filters are a little bit more expensive, they are absolutely killer as far as filters go. Like, not knocking anybody else that makes filters. I think that the Beta ones are pretty good too in my books, but as far as just straight color filters go, those Lumicon ones, they are the best. They are pure optical glass, and the color rendering is so nice on them. Like, typically when I use a color filter, eventually I kind of get annoyed and pull it out. Like, once you kind of tease out whatever detail it is you're looking for. When I'm using those Lumicons, I'll just leave them in, like, oftentimes for a whole evening of observing, because they really don't change it that much, and they're so pale. Like, I got the pale set. You can buy a pale set of 4 or 5 1.25 filters, and I got that whole set, and it is just a beautiful set of paler colors. So with these smaller instruments, 8-inch, you're getting big enough that you can use sort of the darker filters. But with anything like a 6-inch or smaller, like all my instruments are now anyway, um, using these paler color filters are definitely the way to go. Just beautiful. So, but I think you bought a couple of these other Beta color filters, though, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I caught a business going out of sale, or geez, a business going out of business and having a kind of an inventory clearance sale. So I ended up picking up the Bader light blue. Oh, gee, and I'm trying to think what the other colors are now. They're upstairs, but I ended up with 3 or 4 Bader filters and one of the Lumicon greens.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
I'm really excited to hear how they go. I've heard some fairly good things about the Beta filters. They're the only other ones that I've even thought about getting, other than the Lumicon. Lumicon can be a little bit more difficult to get, just depending. So yeah, cool. Was there anything else in the nighttime sky that you were thinking of observing in the coming week, or as things go forward here?
I'm really looking forward to some lunar observing. Like, to me, that's what June is all about. If you're doing, um, any nighttime observing, you might as well look at the moon because it's bright and because it's perpetual twilight. You might as well get your lunar time in. But this week, I'm not going to work. I'm on vacation, so I'm hoping to get some solar observing done during the day as well. So the way it's been around here lately, mornings seem to be the best weather of the day. The wind hasn't come or the rain hasn't come. So I'm hoping for some clear mornings to take a look at the sun.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, to be honest, like, I really find these very bright mornings really difficult. Like, I come from a place that is much cloudier than here, and where the sun doesn't rise quite as early. And so usually I get to sleep in a little bit more, I think just my, natural biological rhythms. And I find, like, getting to this point pretty rough. So I finally feel like I'm starting to come around, but every year it's like a little bit of a bumpy road for about 5 or 6 weeks for me anyway.
Yeah, it is tough to on me. I'm not sad when July and August start to roll around for a little bit of relief in the morning.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. Well, that's good, Shane. Well, unless you have anything else to add, I think we were probably good to wrap it up there. And we'll thank everybody for listening. Really appreciate all the downloads that people are making on the material that we're putting out there. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to ask us a question or has suggestions for topics of future episodes that they'd like to hear about, you can find us on Twitter. We're at Actual Astronomy, and we monitor the account. So feel free to send us a message and let us know if you, again, have a question or have an idea for a future episode.
Yeah, cool. I mean, we have quite a few plans, so no pressure.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
All right. Thanks so much, Shane. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.